All right, welcome to Worldwide Slot Car Chat on Zoom, 210. I'm your host, Greg Gaub. The gang's all here with Luff and John and Mike and Wayne and Courtney and Lenny and Gaza and Jeremy and Don and Garth and Jim and John Weber. And I was hoping Chris would pop in here because I was hoping to start the show. I mean, we'll talk about it anyways because it's worth talking about. But I was hoping maybe to get some insider information slash photographs and details of the upcoming MR slot car metal chassis for their 132 products that are coming out later. So this information was revealed on various YouTube channels and stuff because in the pictures at the MR slot car booth at the festival, they had prototypes and photographs of cars that they're going to make, and some of them had prototype metal chassis, and on their little tag said, metal chassis in parentheses. I have not yet seen somebody post photographs of the metal chassis or seen the metal chassis in the videos, but I saw somebody on one of the forums said that they were able to look at the metal chassis and thinks that it looks fantastic.
There's been a chassis available from him for a while.
In 124th for commercial racing, Mosetti Racing is a well-known.
No,
brand.
it's been 132nd. There has been one.
There's been a chassis available for you to transplant a body shell onto in 132.
Sonic C conversion.
Okay, so do you think that's going to be the same design? Did anybody see the one that was?
I should imagine it will be the basis of it. I didn't get my hands on it myself, I'm afraid.
I saw it quite a while ago.
Yes, quite a while back, 18 months, maybe. I don't know if it's the same, but there was one.
It might just be the same. Well, then I guess there's much less to talk about, but still. If anybody the only person here who went was Wayne, right? I don't think anybody else here in the chat went to the.
That's correct.
Greg, I've got a picture of the chassis that's currently available.
Okay, go ahead and pop that up, Jim, so we know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
That's it, yeah. That's the one I was referring to.
And Chris Walker has a great, I think he has a great build or project on it on Home Racing World. I can't find it at the moment, but he talks about updates and everything. But talking to him separately, it's just kind of died on the vine.
Yeah. Well, Wayne, you didn't get to see the one at the festival to see if it's the same chassis or not?
No.
Did they show the chassis at the festival or just talk about it?
Somebody said they saw a metal chassis under something. It might have been just the Group C chassis.
No, yeah, it was just on a Group C car from what I saw.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's been available for a while.
Yeah.
Well, they preceded Revo Slot by probably a year anyway, as Jim points out. That chassis been out for a while, but I think with the interest in the Revo cars having the aluminum chassis, it might be a good time for them to reintroduce.
And make that.
It's that one that you showed steel, Jim. Does it say aluminium or steel on that one? That might be steel, because I know it's only a hole for a slotted motor pod, but.
What was the question about it?
Do you think that one's aluminium or steel?
It looks like it's steel to me. I can't really tell.
Hold on, our traveler is here. Dewan is here. He's back. He probably saw it in person.
He went. Dewan, did you take a look at the MR slot car booth and see the cars there?
He's muted.
Working on it. There you go.
I did not get to see the specific list.
Useless.
I did hear that the two of the chassis are metal. That was my understanding.
That's what we're talking about. We're trying to figure out if the one that was on display is the same as the Group C one that they've had available for some time already, or if it was something. MR slot car has had a metal chassis for Group C for slotted Group C cars for a while.
Okay, gotcha. Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, yeah, okay.
I had forgotten until they reminded me. But so we're trying to figure out if the one that was on display at Gaydon was that chassis, or was it something new that they're putting under new cars or not?
What the ones just said to me is has given me the cojones to tell it how I saw it, and that was that it was easy to miss the MR slot car stand. And I think that's what's happened to certainly us both. Yes, I regret now. I know that he was there. I regret not at least introducing myself, having a look at what he's got. I mean, I'm very familiar with the McLaren, and I've had my hands on the Porsche since. In fact, one of the circuits was running 4 of the Porsches at the same time. But yeah, I believe I may have seen the guy, but I didn't see the stall, and I didn't know who it was when I saw him. There you go.
Dave Kennedy's got did a not his normal Friday show, but he did a show recently, just from the last day or two, on that MR slot car stuff. The cars and then what he didn't know about the chassis, the metal chassis.
Yeah, so he didn't know pretty much anything about the metal chassis other than there's going to be a metal chassis under a couple of those new cars. So that's what I was hoping to get to the bottom of. But I guess not. We're going to have to wait for that.
Yeah, there was a lot to take in at that, and I didn't see any on his booth.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I thought it was interesting that they chose to display that with a Corvette, what, 1962 Corvette?
C1 Corvette, wasn't it?
Interesting.
It looks like they're going to do a line of classic roadsters.
Yep.
That'd be great.
Yeah, that would be great.
That's the Jim showed the Patriot chassis. This is another chassis that he showed that they were working on.
For 132?
132, doesn't it look 132 to you?
I mean,
yeah, that's 132.
The motor is what makes it look 132.
Yeah, plus the distance between the rear wheels. If you can only fit that motor in the sideways, it's not 1/24 scale. That's for sure.
Yeah. So he posted that like in 22.
Oh yeah, it's been around for a while.
Well, but that might be something similar like that might be what's coming underneath the Lotus or whatever he was talking about, the Ferrari.
Yeah, that makes the most sense. But Ernie's always developing new things. There might be some completely different thing, but it won't be it won't be just like a Revo slot, that's for sure. So it'll be interesting to see how those are in the hobby. I'm sure it'll be well received. All right, so let's do some show and tell. If you got show and tell, raise your hand. I'll make sure to call on you. Excuse me. I don't have any show and tell, so unless somebody raises their hand or waves their hand around. All right, Lenny, go ahead.
All right, mate. Here you go, boys. Then we're just going to do a screen share now. Where is it?
Sure. Down at the bottom, usually.
Oh, there we go. I got it. So just another film, some racing from another angle. This is from Tuesday night with the classic sports and GT cars in a handicap format. This one goes a bit longer than the previous one. This one's about a minute. I tried following the cars around the circuit for a while, then gave up. Just did an overall view. So there you like your Porsche 908s, and there's a McLaren Elva there, and a Lola T70, and I think there's another 908. So that's Callum there, the tall bloke standing there with the grey hair on red lane. You can see him.
You run good, Lenny. What tyres do you run?
Most of these are on the old BRM E22s. Some might be on the G25s now.
Really?
We find them a bit hard to treat. They take a long time to treat. Anyway, that's the end of that. So
that's true. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
It looks like the track has a wee bit of a dip there in an area.
Where are you talking about?
There's a hairpin, and then it looks like there's a dip and a rise on the sort of like.
Oh yeah, there's a there is a little bit of a dip. It's not much. It's only because the legs have settled, so we've just left it there anyway. So that hairpin's actually a bit of an off camber. That's a reverse camber corner. Then it goes back up the hill through the wiggle there. That creates a fair bit of angst for people. See if I can share it again so you can see the.
So it's a naturally created down under. That's pretty cool.
Hey, we live on a sphere. Don't forget, there's no top to a sphere. Well, some of us would have us believe that we live on a flat disc, but held up by an elephant or something. But
yeah, there it is. On the right side where your cursor just there it is. Yeah, it looks like a dip there.
Yeah, no, it's flat there, but it sort of dips down a little bit here, not much. And then there's a off camber here as it goes back up the hill.
Okay, so
it might be
it's after that corner, Lenny, that I was talking about. That looks like a little dip there.
Here?
No, keep going around the corner.
That's it.
Yeah.
No, there's a little wiggle there.
Oh, it's a wiggle, not a dip.
Yeah. So it goes up. It starts going straight back up again.
You'd think at my age I would know the difference between a wiggle and a dip. My apologies.
Yeah, well, one would hope so. Yeah, so and it rises about 200 mil above the track here. So it's sort of that's still flat, but it's on a sort of bank, you might say, because it's on the angle. Then it dips back down here, back down to street level, I suppose you'd say. Yeah.
Now, does it only run in one direction, Lenny?
Yeah, we've only ever run it in one direction. I've toyed with the idea of putting reversible switches on it, but they have enough trouble going through this section here in the normal direction, let alone how they're going to go coming down the hill.
Well, with a feature like that, though, if you do it in opposite direction, it's like having two different tracks. It would be awesome.
Yeah. I have thought about it. I've actually wired it up reverse one day and tried it, but even I was having trouble coming down here. It's hard enough marshalling when they come out through here as it is, because you got to reach. We've got to grab. There's one here and there's another grabber on the other side there, but we always forget to use them.
Yeah, well, you can try every lane without rewiring. Just switch the polarity of one car and see how it goes.
Yeah, that's another way of doing it. But yeah, I'll talk to the boys about that. Like I said, they have enough trouble. Some of them have enough trouble negotiating this section here before in this normal direction, let alone coming back down the hill with a wiggle, then a hairpin. So yeah. Anyway. Yeah, I made that one myself about 8 years ago. That's all hand routed.
Nice.
So made up a trammel for the constant radius corners, and I used a bit of plastic strip for the non constant radius corners.
Yep.
Whatever you call them.
Like the kid I
but this section here tracks them a little bit too. Oh, I can't see it now. Where the hairpin is, because it goes down to 90 mil through that section there. Because I couldn't get the hairpin in at 100 mil lane centers, so they're down to 90 mil. Because otherwise, this the inside inside lane on the hairpin would have been too tight. So, but they don't really notice it.
You know what you could always do is you could sponsor Luff to come there for a week, and he'll build you about 50 tracks in a week. What do you think?
Oh, I think Luff's doing pretty well on his own up there.
I don't see Luff laughing and taking you up on that. So
no, the weather's pretty good here though at the moment. We haven't had any rain for 3 months. The weather's been really mild. But I've got another track on the go. I started it about a year ago, but other projects have taken priority, especially honeydew type projects, honeydews. But I'll get back to that in the next couple of months, I hope.
All righty. Well, thank you very much for sharing. And let's move on to Mr. Chappie Man.
So a couple of weeks ago, I showed the body of the Renault.
Wow.
but now I've done some homemade decals.
That looks awesome. Well
So
done.
that's how it finishes out.
That's good.
So I'm pretty happy with that. Now I've got the chassis to build out, and then I'll have a running car. Faster than the Le Mans miniature for sure.
What'd you do for the glass?
Just packaging.
Yeah.
Like plastic packaging.
Yep.
And then this is the Proxy car, right?
Yeah, looks good.
But I built mine out, at least initially. So pretty easy build. They work well.
How does it
So
drive?
figure out what you're gonna do, guys. Come on.
We do. Yeah. Well,
Now, what did you use to print that with? Is that what is it, resin that you printed?
No, it's all PLA.
Wow.
It's all PLA. I've done a few cars in resin, but most of my cars are PLA.
Nice.
Thank you for showing that.
Thanks.
Looks beautiful. And moving on to Mr. Young. Go ahead, Don.
Well, I've got a update on my monogram search on the chassis, and I ran across this one. Now it's got the wrong wheels on it, but I do believe it's the chassis that Dennis said came on this car.
Yeah, that's correct. That came on which car? I said that one came. That one was available on pretty much all of the cars. So it would. I think the first one that came out like that was the GT, the Ford, and then the 330 PLM. I think the 275 had it as well. The Porsche I know had it. I think the Lola might have had it eventually. Yeah, but that's the right one. That's the second series one.
But I'm still in search for wheels.
For that, yeah.
And actually, it's probably got the wrong axles on it too, because they're too long.
Oh, okay.
It looks also like you've got a Cox crown gear there as well, I think.
Yes, that's what it is.
Yeah, that's what everybody did in the
Everybody did that because the monogram stamp gear is so horrible.
Well, the Series 1 cars had stamp gears. The Series 2 cars, I think, had pot metal cast gears. And they were a little
They were
better.
still horrible.
Yeah, if you could break them in a bit, they were a little better than the stamp gear. Stamp gear would eventually just eat a channel around the pinion.
Well, this one has a 29 tooth crown in it and an 8 tooth pinion.
That's about right. Yeah.
But it doesn't seem to be very smooth. And it may get better as it wears in, because I think this was pretty much assembled to be a full chassis. So, and it's not all original parts, but it's a lot closer than some of the other things that I.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm getting there.
I am absolutely so amazed at the amount of vintage information that we have from our vintage members.
Hey.
Oh, hey, thank you for saying vintage. That's such a nice way of saying old.
especially on his birthday.
Oh, geez, yeah.
It's Dennis's birthday?
Happy birthday, Dennis.
Yeah, happy birthday, Dennis.
Oh, happy birthday to you.
Just another lap around the sun.
I was just gonna say, it's all downhill from 40.
I thought he turned 30 today.
As long as you could still remember what 40 is like.
40 would be nice.
Actually,
Pictures again about something.
well, if I could be 40 again, there's a lot of mistakes I could avoid. That's for sure.
Well, nonetheless, cheers. Happy birthday.
Thank you, guys. Yeah.
All right, all done, Don?
That's it.
All right, thank you, sir. And Courtney's the next on my screen. Go ahead.
I finally have a rolling chassis for the Kit Spa Motorsports Proxy International. It took my CG chassis from my Birdcage Maserati that I didn't finish because I didn't like it. For the Proxy I was going to run. And I took John's little motor and I simply glued it in. I glued in what's left of a slotted pod. Of course, I cut everything out trying to keep weight down and tried to get the body as low as possible. And I have to say, I trued the tires. I need to true the fronts a little more. It's a winner. That's all I can say.
So, okay, I got to ask, you did a really nice job with the tires there. They look really good.
Yeah, they trued up pretty easy. The rims are pretty straight. I don't think I got them mounted quite the way I like them. They're not perfect, but this thing has to get in the mail this week if I'm going to get it up there.
Cool, man.
So,
No, honestly, that looks good. Because I think I told you the weight for Frank Peters, right? He's at like 64, 65 grams or something.
Yeah, and I'm not a modeler. I just sprayed the first coat of primer on the body tonight because I literally just fitted it and put mounts on it, and I'm slamming trying to get it done in between my Revo slot proxy car.
Well, listen, it'll be like a Porsche barn find, right?
Oh, totally.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
Totally.
Cool. No, the chassis looks good.
It should be fast.
Well, I'm looking forward to receiving it. So thanks, Courtney.
All right, thanks for showing that off. And next up is Jim.
While we were talking the first 5 or 6 minutes, I got a shipment from Electric Dreams, and in it came this little thing, which you probably can't see, but now you can maybe see it.
I've got one of those.
There we go.
It's
a nice little brochure or pamphlet about MR Slot Car. And ironically, we were talking about MR Slot Car before, so I figured while I was getting the mail, I would call somebody that knew about the metal chassis. And so I called Ernie and revealed to me that these are kind of his words, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, so I may not be absolutely 100% correct, but it's a Revo slot-like chassis, but it does use a motor pod. So you kind of get an idea what it's like. The motor pod is inline, and it is a proprietary motor pod. And so the car is all MR Slot Car. The only thing that he said that is not MR Slot Car sourced from an outside vendor, besides probably motors, I'm assuming he's not making his own motors, but as far as the parts, it will use the slotted offset crown gears. So I would guess from that, it's like a 1 millimeter offset inline MR Slot Car proprietary motor pod for this new chassis. That's all I got, because I just called him on a whim and asked him if I could relay any information, and he said, here's what you can say, as well as, so I thank you for that. And he said there are pictures out there, so it wasn't just somebody saying, oh, I saw it said motor pod, so I took a picture. He did show the car to people, so somebody may or may not, or somebody may have pictures of it out there because he wasn't hiding it. So hopefully I'll have some more information next week, but that's all the news that's fit to print, as they say right now.
I was gonna say, looks like Courtney posted put a picture there. Also, John Albright on the YouTube chat shared a video to Conquest Racing Club, which had basically still shots of everything at the booth, but all the pictures that I saw on that video was the Group C chassis, which is I think what Oh, no. All right, let me share that. This is what Courtney just stuck in the chat.
That's the Patriot chassis. That is a
Yeah.
slotted.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
a slotted pod. Yeah, but that
That's
definitely.
what's shown in the video too.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It looked
Yeah,
from
that's
this-
been available for a while.
okay.
Yep.
So yeah. So not that chassis. Basically, is what we know. That's all we really know is that it's not
To me,
the Patriot or the.
Regal slot like would mean kind of a pan chassis with
Yeah.
it takes pod. So,
But with
now,
an MR slot car pod, not a slotted type
correct,
pod.
it's a
or
proprietary
NSR or
pod.
whatever.
And so some of the stuff I'm guessing on, but that's what he told me specifically were those three things. Regal slot like, inline, proprietary motor pod, uses slotted offset crown gears. And we saw
Imagine how annoyed those Canadians were that they had to go all the way to England to see that. Isn't that annoying?
and we saw the cars, the Corvette C1, the
Yeah.
Ferrari 250 short wheelbase, and some version of an Aston Martin, which somebody called a Maserati on one of their YouTube channels.
And the
So
Lotus.
Yeah, no, it's an Aston Martin DB4 Zagato. I mean, how can you not know that? Seriously,
somebody called it the Maserati. I'm not sure who said it, but somebody
it's
did.
an Aston Martin
It was
DB4
Dave
Zagato.
Kennedy, and he admitted he made a mistake.
I'm sure.
Okay, but I mean, Jim Clark drove that car, for crying out loud.
Yeah, I'm not saying he tried to deceive people. It was just a mistake, but it's not not a Maserati. It's an Aston Martin.
And to Dewan's earlier point, this is the problem when you are not vintage.
Yeah, I
This is
certainly
the problem when you're not a vintage model.
I'd have been
Yeah.
like, if there's no placard, I have no idea what car that is. Sorry. All right, thanks for the update, Jim. I guess we're still looking for insider photograph of the new chassis at some point. Looks like we're done with show and tell, unless somebody wants to wave their hand in front of the camera for me. All right.
Can I just ask a quick question of Jim?
Sure.
Please. Is that an Elva Courier in your background?
Yes, it is.
Jim? Oh, okay, lovely. Yeah, I haven't seen one in that colour before. We got a couple here in Australia. The one I remember the most is blue.
That was on St. Patrick's Day here, so green with green with.
Oh, right. Yeah. Thank you.
All righty. Moving on to Club Corner. If you got past, present, or future stuff to talk about, I forgot I was going to share this, so I'll segue into Club Corner with a share of the Mini King. I don't know, Chris King, whatever we want to call it, Chris's King style track. He took pity on some of the racers and decided to alter this corner from the R1, R2 that it was. Now it's an R2, R3. And he says it drives a lot smoother than it did before.
It's not a D3, is it?
Was that?
No, sorry, R2, D2, I was thinking. It's all right.
R2? Oh,
Sorry.
Sorry, that's okay. I'm slow right now anyways. As far as club activity goes, you'll see on my channel a single heat of us running the NSR F22s on Blair's 3-lane 6x16-ish wood track with 2 squeeze points with open wheel cars, and it was an absolute bloodbath, as one would expect. And yeah, so it's funny. There was one of the guys brought a friend to come and see and kind of witness our silliness, and we were talking about how difficult they are to drive, and I'm like, this is why we barely ever run open wheelers, and it's usually 2-3 years between open wheel classes, and then when we run it, everybody remembers why they generally don't vote to run open wheelers of any kind the next time for the next 2 or 3 years. Next one we're running NSR, Classic Le Mans and Can-Am, so it'll be a completely different.
With Crash and Burn, I would have expected that to be quite a cooperative event.
And there was, and in fact, on the video that I shared, one of the guys who notoriously never takes a blue flag for anybody, no matter how many laps he is behind, did. take a blue flag because he obviously realized, you know what, I just want to get more laps because most of the time with our racing, because it's scratch and burn, if you just focus on getting your laps in, you're usually going to land close to, if not on the podium. But especially with open wheel cars where, just the tiniest little flick of a touch and, your car goes flying, like moving.
Yes.
So, yeah.
When do you start the next? When do you guys start the next series?
There are 3 more races. So next week it's Eric, and then the week after that it's me, and then the week after that it's Russ's again. You need to send me an
Are you
email.
running MSEG, your track?
I'm almost done cleaning up my garage. I'm like Mr. ADHD. When I go out to my garage to like do some work, I'm like, what is that box? And then I pull that box out and I'm like, we don't need this crap. And I start going through the box and I'm like, wait a minute, I need this crap, but not this crap. And then it's a whole thing. That's why I've been taking the last several weeks to work through that process. I will be ready. And it will be another bloodbath because my track is tight and technical with lots of R1 turns. Should be fun.
But it is possible to go.
Oh, it will. It
Oh, wow.
absolutely will. It's goable right now if I just take the things off that are currently sitting on the track. But
No, but I mean it's not so difficult that it's impossible. But I can see where it would be, without being familiar with it and not having run it for a while, it would be a real handful.
Oh yes, the guys will be well benefited by coming early and getting as much practice time as they can manage. But unfortunately, being a 2-lane track, that means I'm going to have to probably schedule, do short practice and force them to rotate out to let other people get on and practice because we only got an hour for practice. Maybe I'll tell them they can come extra early or something. Yeah.
You should video the whole
I will probably
Formula One.
I will probably
race. That would be fun to watch.
Yeah, I might turn on my track computer is a full Windows computer, and I do have a webcam out there that I might turn on. It's just it's not wide angle, so you only get part of the track. But yeah, I'll probably do something. So watch for that video, subscribe. Anyway, I'm done talking. Lenny's got his hand up. Again, anybody else who wants to talk about club stuff, raise your virtual hand. Go ahead, Lenny.
Okay, yeah, just a quick one. We ran one of our handicap races Tuesday night, and it was for, as I said in that video, it was for classic sports and GT cars. So Jeff was a scratch man this time. He scored the best of 111 over the previous 3 races, so he starts from 0. For some reason, he decided to run a slower car. He ran an NSR Porsche 917K. He normally runs a Thunderslot Lola, and the thing's a projectile. Anyway, consequently, partway through the race, he got sick of the Porsche and went back to the Lola. He copped a 1-lap penalty for his trouble, and but still managed to finish last in the handicap section. Young Andrew managed to come out on top in both handicap and overall scores. So yeah, and then Andrew was running a what do you call it, a Polycar Ferrari 330p. Then Steve finished second in the handicap with his 9083 Porsche. Then Callum with his Thunderslot Elva McLaren. And Andrew with his he swapped 2 cars. He started with the 917K and then finished with a Lola T70. Then me, I had a shocking night. I ran an old Power Slot Lola that I've got, and it was an absolute dog. It just kept wanting to de-slot with the tyres rubbing. Then Ian started the same handicap score as me, but he decided to run his tyres in on his Ford GD40 he's got. And then there's Jeff in last place. So yeah, so that's just a quick rundown on that. I won't bother trying to explain how we arrive at the handicap scores because it got confusing last time. I understand how it works. couple of my guys do. So yeah, so I'll get out your way.
So you understand how it works, and you still don't win it?
No,
Oh man!
what am I doing wrong, Dennis? No, I got this bit of a hybrid. I've got one of those old power slot Lyle T298s, and I've adapted a slotted pot up to it, so it runs a slotted orange end bell in it.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be a pretty good car, but for some reason the tyres are obviously the tyres are too big and they're rubbing on the body and it's pulling the car out the slot. So I was the Andrea de Cesaris of Spitfire Raceway on Tuesday night.
Are you running rubber?
Crashing into everybody.
They're running what, E22s and G25s?
Most of these cars have got the E22.
Yeah.
Okay.
The old E22s. They're not available anymore. BRM has stopped making them.
But rubber, not silicone or urethane.
Yeah. We don't run silicon. We
yeah,
don't run. We allow urethane and rubber, but no treatment. If you get caught treating your tyres with any sort of oil treatment on it, you get one chance to fix it up. If you refuse to do that, you get invited to go home.
Okay, well, that's good. Yeah.
All right, good stuff, sir. Anybody else want to talk about racing? Nothing from you, Mike?
We didn't race this week.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'll lament a little bit more about racing at Blair's. I love the man. He's a great person. Not a big fan of squeezes that aren't squeezes, but we've already beaten that horse. But he doesn't tune cars. He knows nothing about tuning cars. He pretty much always just hands off if he's gonna participate in the racing, he hands off his cars to one of the other guys to do the tire tubing and stuff like that. Pretty much every car that he buys just to run for fun on his track, the first thing he does is replace the rear tires with silicone tires. And we pretty much never run silicone tires as a club. So our series cars never have silicone tires. So we come to his track and we practice with our rubber tires on his track that has basically, he's been practicing with silicone tire cars. And then 99 times out of 100 we run IROC using a set of his cars, which are silicone tired cars. So we just practiced with rubber tires, trying to get as much grip as we can. And then we run silicone tires on the track again. And then we race with the rubber tires, praying for traction. And just he doesn't like, I don't think he watches my videos, so he's not going to be mad at me or anything. He just can't even mention to him the fact that this is not optimum usage of tire compounds on his track. And any hint of, hey, maybe don't, is not not received as constructive criticism. But yeah, I was fighting traction issues all night, basically just having a.
What kind of track surface is it?
It's painted. It's matte latex paint.
Uh-huh.
And if you see in the video, it's got blue grooves all over the place.
Oh yeah.
So you'd think, I mean, the traction isn't bad. Like I definitely have had worse traction on other tracks in other conditions, but you can tell the difference. You can absolutely feel the difference between, we practice for an hour and everybody's running, tires that they just put, cleaner on or lighter fluid on or oil on or whatever. And then we get good traction going, and then the silicone just erases that, and then we're back to square one.
Why doesn't he run the IROC last?
That's also a good point.
I like
That's-
everything this guy is doing. I don't know what you're talking about. I love it. That's how we run. And like, you have to learn, you can't tune a car with rubber tires the same as you do with silicone. And you kind of learn both different ways. So I don't know.
That's true, and we accept it. I'm just bitching and moaning. I'm just
Yeah,
you know.
I understand.
Yeah, just being Greg.
Jeremy, do you find that the silicone has more traction then?
Oh yeah, silicone always has more grip, but a lot of guys that are used to rubber aren't used to the way the car handles when it hits a turn. Instead of sliding out, it will sometimes chatter around. And you got to get your weight right. I mean, it is hard. I'm not gonna lie, but it's one of those things. I'd rather buy tires once every 20 years than every 3 years or whatever it is.
I would love the heck out of silicone if they would just true.
Yeah, you have to have a true rim. That's part of the challenge.
and hope that the tire's pretty good. Like, have you never put a silicone tire on a metal rim and not had it be true?
I never have, but I don't know where you're getting silicone tires
I
from.
have.
Oh, I've had it.
Never had.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But I always true the rim before I put the tire on there too. I assume you guys are doing that.
With a metal rim?
Oh, sure. I'll throw it on. I'll true that right up. I mean, I'm not gonna go crazy and dig into the metal, but I'll put it on there just to. When you start it spinning, you'll hear the metal going on one side, and you're like, "Huh, that's a weird." So yeah, but everybody's different.
What kind of drum do you use on?
Oh, you got to use a metal lathe. You can't just.
Oh well, metal lathe.
Yeah, you're not just gonna. Come on, Greg. Be serious.
So you lathe it. You don't put it on a tire turning machine. You put it on a lathe.
That's my metal tire turning machine.
That makes sense.
I'm putting a sticker on it. I'll be selling it on the website next week.
Yeah, it's kind of tough to do on a track with a piece of sandpaper. I think.
Yeah, you're not gonna get that down. Very good.
The silicones you use, Jeremy, do they sit between shoulders on the wheels, or do you actually
do what?
The silicone tires you use, do they have a 5mm wide groove inside them to fit on the wheel?
Well, each tire that you go buy will be made specifically for that wheel you're using. You have to look up which one matches which. But the molds they make are CNC. I've seen the molds for who's the guy who makes urethane tires? I can't remember his name. Anyway, I've seen them. Yeah, Paul Gage. I've seen Paul Gage molds before they were set to Paul. I mean, they're perfect. They come out perfect like every time. So when they cast them, they should be perfect every time. If you're getting like weird divots and bumps on silicone, I would talk to whoever you bought them from.
My only experience with them is that they were plain inside, and they actually sat between ridges on the extremities of the wheels. The wheels were designed to take it.
These wheels here are the wheels from Electric Dreams for their Trans Am wheel. And then these silicones are from, not Super Tire. What's the other one? The Michigan guys.
Quick Slicks.
Quick Slicks. Right. But once you find, this is just the exact same dimensions as the Scale Electric wheel. And so you just buy the Scale Electric one. It's got a little bit of a ridge inside of it. I don't know if you can see that. There.
Oh yeah.
It fits perfectly on there. And then like guys in our club, they won't glue them a lot of times. I always glue my silicone tires on because I don't want the wheels to go flying. But we race mixed. We do rubber. We do whatever you want. You get to pick your tires as long as it's not foam. And you just kind of you learn to adjust. So.
Well,
I understand that silicone does true. It just takes a long time.
I don't think it does true. I've never seen anybody true it.
Well, no, it'll chunk. So to your point, Jeremy, if you're manufacturing silicone, you got to make sure that you've degassed it really, really well, so you don't get any air bubbles in it. So it's nice and true. That's really important.
Oh, and the mold. I mean,
well, the mold too. Yeah, most guys who make tires out of silicone actually use metal molds. Believe it or not, they'll
aluminum.
Yeah.
That's what I saw when I looked at them.
Most of the silicones that I've seen have pretty sharp edges. I wonder if that's the factor that contributes to the chattering that you're talking about, Jeremy.
It could be. I think it's just getting too much grip a lot of times, and then you move your weight around where you don't want as much. But I don't know. And then everybody says, well, the silicone cleans all the rubber off of the track, and to me, like having a clean track, that's a bonus. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Clean the track all day. I don't care.
It's not that rubber tires don't have any grip.
Yeah.
But they don't have as much grip as if there was still rubber on the track.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard that a lot, and I've never experienced it. I'm sure it's real, but I've never just really experienced it.
Yeah, the other thing too, Jeremy, if you're gluing, oh, sorry.
When you get to our level, then you'll notice.
Oh, okay, thanks, Greg. I think it's a lot of bro science myself. I'd like to see some like scientific
Jeremy,
information on it.
If you're actually trying to glue silicone to anything,
yeah,
it's kind of a waste of time because the only thing silicone sticks to is silicone, and you use silicone to stick.
Yeah, I use that black RTV silicone.
Yeah, that
it
will
works
stick
for
to the
me.
rim. Oh, that's great. It'll just basically give a better sort of grip to the rim, but you're really not gluing it. Yeah.
Well, it ain't going flat. How dare you, John?
But why no foam tires?
Oh, I think because we used to have part of our club was Scratch Builders Club, and they used the big foam. I can't remember what they're from. Like those giant foam tires. They put like goopy stuff on it all over, and it just made the tracks dirty and crusty. And I just think back then nobody was making actual foam tires really for like 1/32 commercial or production cars. Now I know you can get them. We were just like, let's just skip that and stick with silicone or rubber or urethane.
I mean, the foam rubber is rubber. It's just foam rubber.
Yeah, I know.
I would say, if anything, the rule should change to, no, sticky goop additives, traction additives, or whatever. But it's not my club.
I was just going to say, I found something that we could circle back to Don's chassis question that might help if this is a good time to do that.
I was just going to say, I love me some foam rubber, Scale Auto foam rubber that have phenomenal grip on lots of different surfaces. And that's the end of the conversation. Go ahead, John.
So, Don, I hope this helps. This is from the Monogram catalog in the 60s. And these were the 1/32 scale chassis that they had in their catalog. So the
left one, isn't it?
It's actually, I think this
top left is the Series 1 chassis.
Right. And I think Don has this one. This chassis was only used, I think, for the hot rod.
The one on the top right, that was only the hot rod.
And then this was their Grand Prix, the GP chassis here.
Yeah.
As well as for the midget.
And the midget.
Yeah.
Correct.
Cool. And cool. I thought
the rear tire, the rear wheels and tires on the Grand Prix chassis and the Series 2 chassis were the same. The wider ones.
Right. And then I thought I'd also circle back to everybody's wondering which MR slot car it was. Here's a picture of the DB4 Zagato. That's only the picture I think he showed was in white. There was a white version of this as well.
I mean, I might have said it's a Porsche.
With a grill like that, it can only be an Aston Martin.
Exactly. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Unfortunately, these days it could also be a Ford because Ford have adopted that grille shape.
Who owns Aston Martin?
No, they well, don't forget Ford owned Aston Martin for a wee bit as well as Jaguar, and it was the same designer who did it. So he didn't steal it.
That's clearly a Jaguar.
Never mind. Well, Aston Martin's more Canadian than British right now. So
I thought it was a Jaguar over there.
Jaguars here and Jaguars.
Jaguar.
Yeah. The difference is the little sort of dip on the sides of the grill.
Yeah.
Or oval.
Right. Now I have to ask Dewan, did you not take any photos? Are you not going to give us a little report of your travels? I mean, you still have your traveling hat on. Looks like you just got back in.
I'm surprised he's awake right now.
Well, with the time change and everything, he should be, sort of at par with our neighbors from across the Atlantic.
He should be
Yeah, I'm
asleep.
still catching up with the jet lag, but I have photos of some of the products that I got, but I'm gonna have to save them for next week, unfortunately. I didn't get a chance to upload them and ready. That's tomorrow.
So you get jet lag, we get picture lag. That's not right.
You look like you should have some corks dangling off the brim of your hat, the one.
Yeah.
True blue Aussie, mate.
Yeah.
Since we're circling back, I'm going to circle back on the MR slot car. Mr. Albright pointed me to a very specific time on the video that Conquest Racing has. We believe this to be the new chassis.
Ooh, that looks like a riff on the polycarb pod.
Very long. I'm going to slow it down here. See if we can see more. So there's definitely a plate break right there. So that's probably body mounting area, right? That does look like the Polycar classic F1 chassis pod.
Yeah, but without the gear reduction.
Yeah, without the
gearbox.
Basically no screws in the back, but then two side screws
Oh.
and then in the center. And then a replaceable guide.
He's obviously used a plastic guide holder so that he can make a lot of the different leads on the same chassis.
Yeah.
He did say too that front axle height is adjustable.
It looks like they're on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would hope so.
It looks like he's got these the sort of towers pieces that he's come out with before for the replacement of other front ends, sort of T-shaped pieces.
Reflections in the glass really mess things up too.
Interesting.
Oh, so the guide tongue screws onto the chassis.
Uh-huh.
And it's a unique motor pod. I just wish we could see the pivot at the back.
No pivot at the back.
Like it's,
I was going to
doesn't
say,
look like
No,
it's
it's
got
just
any screws in the sides, does it?
it's just the sides, like the Polycar.
Well, at least it looks that way, but
No, back up. There's a rear mount behind the gear.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
I can see it. Okay, so the sides are just for dampers or something like that.
Greg, can I share what I've got?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just took that picture. Oop, wait a minute. I just took that picture and ran it through a cleanup processing.
Sure.
Hey, welcome to Slot Car CSI. This is cool.
Yeah, you can just really see the back mount behind the crown.
That's Meg's picture. I just ran it through a processor that cleans it up.
Wow.
So you can see the reef spot lineage there with a separate plate for the body mount, I guess, or something. And
Yeah. He didn't separate the front axle though from the rear.
Doesn't look like it.
Well, except for the pod.
ain't technology.
Yeah.
It looks like kind of little rattle side pans.
So he could offer different lengths of essentially guide length. You could change the guide length with any chassis that is put together.
As long as it has a same wheelbase.
Nice.
It looks like something that could be used for scratch building as well. I think that's awesome.
Oh yeah.
Looks good. I mean, based on what we know from Revo slot and pods. Based on what we know so far, it looks good. Thank you to Mr. Albright for pointing out that picture, that section of the video for me. Thank you very much, sir. Floor is open. What you guys want to talk about?
I see nobody else got the memo on our dress code but John Weber.
What are we celebrating? I don't know what's NASA today.
Have the other part that you have, because I'm definitely.
They're just space cadets.
I kind of have a topic.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I had posted this on the forum asking, why is it most clubs will race for distance traveled to determine their winner instead of setting a distance and seeing who gets there the fastest? I'm just curious how you guys do it in your clubs, if that makes sense. It's kind of like the difference between the 24 hours of Le Mans versus the Indy 500, where the Indy 500, they're going to go 500 laps. Whoever gets to is going to be the winner. 24 hours of Le Mans, you can go for 24 hours, and whoever goes the furthest is the winner.
I think the difference is that in the Indy 500 only has one lane. And how do you, if you do a 500 lap race, how long do you stay on each lane? And when you do it with time, it's easy. You get 3 minutes on each lane.
Right. And then you do the 3 minutes. How do you determine the winner? The guy who has the lowest time, who gets there the fastest, or the guy who went the furthest?
In 3 minutes, you run 24 laps, and then you move the car to the next lane. So whatever portion of that lap that you got, you keep. So you move the car to the next lane and then start the next lane and go from there.
That's right. You're racing for distance there.
Right. Yeah.
What I'm saying is that if you just set 24 or everybody's going to race 100 laps, whoever does it the fastest is now the winner. You're timing different things, but I'm just curious why it never took off.
Because if you've got 10 guys, then all 10 have got to do the 100 laps.
Right. More track time.
Yeah.
Then you get the laps of shame for the guys that are way behind the leader as well. So the leader might lap somebody 3 or 4 times. And you've all got to stand there while those guys complete their 4 laps.
We always want those weaker drivers to have more track time. I thought, at least in my club, it's worked out well.
But we also don't want them to be shamed. We don't want them to feel bad. I think it's probably the time consumption.
Yeah.
I mean,
plus it's a lot easier to control multiple cars with a single controller if you're using time, where you can just switch the power off and it applies to everybody. Otherwise, in days gone by, you did not have computers that could individually shut down lanes as people completed certain numbers of laps and give you the times. So the traditional, the vintage way of doing it, John, the vintage way of doing it was always, let's do it by time, because at the end of 3 minutes, we can
you just cut all the power then after 3.
All the cars stop, and then we know exactly where they are.
So that's what I think Alan Wilkinson had mentioned to me about that. And because one of the advantages you gain is when in that style of racing that from yesteryear, you move the cars over and everybody's kind of walk around, move your car over. Maybe you move it back an inch or forward an inch, and you get to the end, and then the race ends. Everybody puts a marker down where they were at, and somebody always fumbles it. But in that race, it just feels like you're racing against yourself. Where the other format, once we all have 1,000 or how many ever laps we have, 100 laps, we all know where we have to go, and it's a heat race for all 4 lanes because you're starting at the line and stopping at the line. It just seems like it's more exciting to me, and that's what we switched to. But I'm just wondering why it never caught on with the bigger clubs. I assume nobody here else is doing it by time. Everybody's doing it by distance. Well, think about it. This one might be getting a little too wordy.
There's another alternative too, and you can talk to Danger Dan because he's a fray racer.
Yeah.
Fray, they do 10 lap heats.
Right.
And time has 0 to do with it other than the tiebreaker. So in a 10 lap heat, whoever wins the heat gets, if it's a 4-lane track, they usually get 4 points and 3 points and 2 points. And then at the end of all the heats, the person with the most points wins.
Right. But they're just using points. They're still determining the winner of that heat by who did it the fastest, right? Everybody's going 10 laps. I got there first. I got the most points.
Yeah, whoever crosses first.
Yeah. Yeah, there's only really 2 ways to measure a race. It's either distance or time. You can add points and move it around any way you want. I was just curious if anybody else has switched, but I assume most people are still doing distance.
I think probably Dennis pretty much hit the nail on the head that it's a holdover from.
That's the way it used to be because it was easier to hit one stop button at 3 minutes and just everybody move.
Yeah, you know, if I think back to the 60s when we had clubs, we had no computers. We had some kind of lap counting systems based on old, with relays and clickers and telephone counters and all kinds of things, but just one big ass switch that switched off the power to the track, and that makes it easy. If we were there to try and, have to watch every guy and have an individual stopwatch or whatever going to time everybody's 10 laps in a heat or 100 laps in a final or whatever, it would have been a problem. I mean, we used to run other kinds of races where you ran the 100 laps, but the power went off when the first guy hit 100, and that was it. If you didn't get to 100, then you didn't, you got however many laps you got, but you didn't get a time for that. You got a position, and the position was based on the number of laps you'd finished in the time that the winner got the specified target distance. So you're doing 120 laps. Well, when the first guy crosses 120, power off. That's it.
Yeah, we tried that way too. And that sped things up for sure. But then the weaker drivers weren't getting those extra 3 laps, where the best drivers in the club were always getting more laps. So I wanted to look at a way to kind of balance that out.
The best drivers are always going to get more laps regardless.
I know, but if everybody gets 10 laps, then they won't get more laps. So everybody will have.
No, but you're not measuring how many laps they were doing anyway.
No, I'm measuring how fast they did it. They're still going to be the winners. You're not going to beat them. I'm just saying they're going to get more lap time instead of at the expense of the
well, then the slow guys get more driving time anyway because they're on the track longer.
Yeah, that's what we want. That's what I want. Weaker guys get better, and they don't get better by sitting watching. I'm just curious because I think we've had computer timing systems for at least 10 years now. And I know I've been doing it for 10 years. I just wonder why other formats haven't really picked up, but maybe it's just not the way it's going to be.
I think that if you go looking at the computer timing systems, there are options available to do it that way. And I think that the problem is not how old the computer systems are. The problem is how old the computer operators are.
How old the racers are.
More than likely.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So the answer to your question is, it's a holdover from, ancient times.
Yeah.
Vintage time. Vintage, please.
It's a vintage format.
And 2, it's a time management thing. And maybe C, it's try to shame the newbies less. Because like having done both kinds, like my club primarily does the distance thing, right? We do a 2-minute heats, and most laps, and then bonus points based on position in case of ties and stuff. And then the end of the night, it's based on total number of laps, total number of points. It's basically all distance stuff with a set time. All the power stops at the same exact time, regardless of where you are on the track. And then I raced with Alan, last year at Nascot Wood, and they are the opposite. They're laps only, and so Mr. Newbie, me, bombed pretty much every heat, and I was taking laps of shame every time. I'm not super proud man, so it didn't really bother me. But I can see that would be, would that be more discouragement than getting fewer laps? My gut reaction is yes, a little bit, maybe not a lot, but a little bit more discouragement running laps of shame versus simply getting fewer laps. Like everybody stops at the same time and I get fewer laps would hurt less than me going around slowly for 1 or 2 more laps after everybody else who's faster than me has already stopped.
Yeah, we put the option in that if you don't make a lap in 30 seconds, it just assumes you've DQ'd. So if you really are upset about doing your extra 2 laps, you just pick your car up and leave, and it'll won't count you.
Or if your car breaks.
Yeah, if your car breaks, it's 30 seconds, you're done. Yeah. So yeah.
As far as getting newbies more lap time, I would say that the guys with experience really shouldn't be hogging the track during practice time. I mean, come on.
No.
I'm not
But during a race is what I was saying, is that in a race where you're
Yeah,
going
but-
for distance, the top guys will always get the most laps at the expense of the weaker drivers. But here's a way to balance that out, and you
But
get
you're not
exciting
balancing-
heat races then.
You're not really getting more practice per se. What they need is more. What they need is more trigger time in general, which means
Right.
they need unrestricted trigger time, right? So I'm not gonna say I'm like the best driver. I'm not bad, but I'm okay, and I tend to just go ahead and make sure my car is running the way I expect it to. Usually just one lane. I don't even run it on all 4 lanes or however many lanes. I just, hey, my car goes, okay, good, I'm fine, and then I let everybody else practice. And of course, the fast guys are practicing more, but at the very least, I'm letting the guys who are slower also practice more, because they're the ones who really need more practice. If I had my druthers, I'd tell Johnny Greasebones and Pat and Vic and half of the club, freaking put your car on, run it around 2 times, you're done. Let the other guys race on it.
Yeah.
But,
The other thing is, in a distance race like that where you're moving your car over, it's hard to know where you're at or how you're doing in the race sometimes, because you're starting at the line and somebody else is like halfway and they pass you and you're like, okay, I'm trying to do the math in my head unless you can see the screen. Whereas in racing for time, you always have a heat race. If you beat the guy who's in last place, well, I got 3rd place in this heat. It's like, it's little bonuses for those new guys to kind of work their way up for a heat win. That's in 20 years from now, when all you veterans are dead, I'm going to come into this channel with Greg and I'm going to talk about Dennis Sampson, the great man, once told me we should always race for time, and nobody will know the difference, and I'll convert everybody over.
Woohoo! I live till 72.
There you go, Greg.
The very first thing I want to say about that is I was explaining why it was like that. I didn't express any particular personal support for one system or another.
Dennis, I'm going to edit your audio right there 20 years from now, and you will support with AI. You will support my position on that. So it's fine.
He won't know about it. He'll be dead.
Yeah,
I'll be
care.
Yeah, you guys should all race digital, then you wouldn't have to worry about it. First got it
Well,
all
now you're just being ridiculous.
Boom.
All right, that was all I had. I'm just curious how people do it.
We all might just hang around to spite you, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll just hang around to spite you.
Jeremy, is it plastic or magnebride?
For what?
On the track.
We have 2 plastic tracks and then 6, 7, 8 wooden tracks. So it's not magnebride now.
Oh,
my track is, but we only have like 2 classes that are magnet.
Yeah, I was going to say just magnet only for the newbies. Let them race against the other guys with no magnet.
No, I'm just thinking about like when I started, that doesn't work, because when I started, I was the worst driver in the club. I mean, 20 some years ago, 24 years ago. And the only thing that helped me was getting on that track time and getting more laps. And then when I got my own track, I got way better. But some guys, I just think that I'd rather see the weaker guys drive. That's just me. I want everybody to get better and beat me, by an inch or whatever, instead of me and the top guy win by a mile or something.
Yeah, you're definitely in the wrong sport.
I know.
It's just that you're in the wrong state.
I like a good race. I don't like the mud stomp people.
In the wrong state. That's even better.
I mean, there's 2.
Courtney's out there beating his kids by 8 laps. You stink. Go tell your mom. Yeah.
First loser.
Yeah. He's Ricky Bobby out there. All right. That's just what I had. I was just curious to see what other people do.
I'm the same as Jeremy. I've said before, our club's motto is it's more fun to lose by an inch than win by a mile. And so I take that, to heart, in that, like Jeremy was saying, the goal is to help the newbies get better, right? I don't want to be running circles around them. I want to be riding side by side with them while we're racing. So, but then, I'm helping them tune their cars. I'm chewing their tires for them when they don't have a tire machine. I'm, showing them how I put my weight in and all this other stuff. But, that only goes so far. They still need trigger time. They need to get on the track. They need to make the car go around, not get too upset when they crash, because that's just the nature of the game. But yeah, that's, how do you manage personalities? There's an endless question for you.
Best you can.
You can, best you can. Yeah.
And does every club have that one guy who doesn't really tune his cars? And
Oh,
then
yeah.
you're like, at least put some oil on that thing. It's been sitting in your box for 6 years. He just doesn't care, but he still shows up every week, and you're like, okay, as long as you're having fun.
And then they crash and get all pissed off and.
Very cost effective that was.
Or yeah, you have that super competitive guy who gets taken out by the weakest driver, and then it's a meltdown, and you're like, okay, come on,
Yeah.
you know where he's gonna be in the track. You know he's gonna take you out.
Shut up, Jeremy.
All right, that was Jim Rose I was talking about.
Why'd you put your hand up? Okay, Jim, go ahead. You got your hand up, down, go ahead.
Speaking of race formats, does anybody do fuel stops?
We do at Russ's track.
Yeah, we do.
For digital.
I introduced it with analog races.
I'm talking about analog.
Yeah, I introduced it a couple of times, but some of the less technical people were like, I can barely keep the car on the track as it is. Now I got to watch for fuel. And so I just be like, oh my God. Okay. You know what I'm talking about, Jim Rose. But it was just like some of the older guys were like not interested in looking up the screen. And I'd say, you just got to park under the bridge. That's all you got to do. Anywhere under the bridge. And they would still be confused. Like, where? Huh? What? Okay. It's going to be a younger man's sport.
We've done it a few times. I can't say that I really like it, but I don't mind it every once in a while. It adds another dimension.
Yeah, it's a new dimension that entertains all my guests that come by. That's all we run is fuel simulations and quite a few other little tricks that we put in there. But the fuel simulation is the big one, and that yeah.
Courtney's not going to like this, but with the fuel simulations, it should help keep the pack of the field, the numbers tighter, because Jim Rose is doing faster laps. He's burning more fuel. Whereas, the old person just putting around. What's that?
I don't buy that at all. Just because I'm going faster in a real car doesn't mean I'm burning more fuel.
It's not a real car though, Jim. It's just a toy. So it's that fuel is, I think it's a real toy. You're okay. But I think that fuel, you can adjust those numbers. So if you want more fuel to burn, you can do that too. Just to make it closer at the end. You're still going to win the race usually, but would you rather win by 7 laps or win by, 1 lap? So that's all it does. Okay. See, you and Courtney are not going to like that format.
Depends who I'm beating, right?
Yeah.
If I'm beating you, I want to beat you by 1 lap. If I'm beating Jim, I want to beat him by 7.
That makes sense.
If I'm beating Courtney, then 7's not enough either.
Yeah.
I've got to.
Now you get into the realm of how do you measure fuel usage, because not all cars go just as fast with the same throttle application. So measuring throttle application is just not actually good enough.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk on the forums about that.
Before we get
oxygen.
to that particular topic, I'll just toss in my take on that. And I agree with Jeremy. We should be brothers or something. I don't know. But Russ runs his track with fuel. So we pretty much always run longer heats, fully marshaled. Cars go back on the track when they crash with fuel stops and everything. And he usually sets them up so that whichever car we're driving, in the 3.5-ish minutes, we have to pit at least 3 times in order to finish the race without running completely out of fuel. And you're absolutely right that with the way the program works and the way most analog fuel programs work is pretty much the only way they can work is the faster laps burn more fuel. And how they do the math, whatever, doesn't matter. Faster laps burn more fuel, slower laps burn less fuel. And so the faster guys are, let's say they're running 6 laps, they're getting 6 laps out of a full tank because they're just flying. And so they got to park and then take on their fuel. And the slower guys are able to run 7, 8, 9, potentially 10 if they crash a couple of times because those laps are so much slower. They burn so much less fuel for those crash laps. They've only got to pit twice, right? And to fill a tank from 0 to full, because all the tanks are the same size, takes the same amount of time. So the fast guys are having to stop more and more often, but the slow guys are having to stop less often, and
Then you're not playing slot car racing anymore. You're playing mathematics, aren't you?
There's a whole lot of fuel management strategy involved. And usually for the first few heats, it's a matter of, okay, how many laps are the fast guys getting before they absolutely have to stop for fuel for if otherwise they'll run out of fuel and be out. And then how many are the slow guys getting before they have to stop without running out? And then it's like, okay, well, where am I in that? How many laps can I get without fear of running out? And the real strategy comes in towards the end, right? You always are going to take 2 full tanks. But then the question is, after you burn that second tank down, when do you come in for the third tank? Do you come in early and fill to the top and hope that you have exactly enough fuel that you need to finish out the maximum number of laps you possibly could before the timer runs out? Or do you wait for your fuel to run out and take as much fuel as you think you need for the last 20, 30 seconds of clock time, right? And so that's where people mess up or do well, right? So at the end of the heat, you're going to see, guys, puttering to a stop because they ran out of fuel at 1 second, and then somebody who had still a few drops of fuel left but were far behind, able to go ahead of them. They were on the same lap basically, but one was far behind, but he had just enough fuel to not run out of fuel when he crossed under the light to be able to continue powering around, turn 1 and turn 2 and so on before those last couple of seconds. And then it's like, upset win, and he managed his fuel so well and good job. And then like, okay, when did he take his fuel for that third tank? How many laps did he have?
Do your cars come to a dead stop when you run out of fuel then, Greg?
On Russ's track, he has...
That's digital though, right?
No, this is analog. So
it is analog, okay.
It's the big 4-lane wood track with that huge bank and stuff.
Okay.
He has individual lane power control. And that was the other thing I was going to mention is you need a little bit different hardware technology to manage fuel in the first place. Of course, you have to have software, but the hardware that goes along with telling the computer that you're still under the light rather than passing under the light. And then individual lane power control and stuff like that. So yeah, when you run out of fuel, if you forget completely that you're running a fuel-based race and you run your tank empty and pass under the light at full speed, you just coast to a stop because your power just got cut.
Wow.
So the challenge is to make that happen on the last possible second, or at the very least, if you still have fuel when the timer runs out, that you don't have like freaking half a tank or a full tank or something like that because you completely mismanaged fuel.
So
my
race
experience
coordinator does 3 ways. You can, if you run out of fuel, it can cut power, like you said, if you have 4-channel relay, or it can let you keep running, but you won't be getting any points. So you'll be racing like, why am I getting? Oh, I'm out of fuel. And then the third way is that the relays can trip power, so you stutter around the track, like on off until you get back to where you are. So you can do it any way you want if you have the software for it.
But on an analog track, do you have any change in performance of the car as the fuel level changes?
No.
Not with any system I've
Okay.
used.
So finishing a race with half a tank of fuel is no advantage over a guy finishing the race with a drop of fuel left in the tank.
Correct.
Yeah,
Or
that's
no
the difference
disadvantage
in digital.
Except
that
that you spent
the-
more time in the
it's
pits than you
affected.
needed.
Yeah.
That's the only difference. You could have been you could have left the pits sooner and potentially either got another lap or got ahead of them because we still do the place points, right? So
Yeah.
assuming
Other
everybody
que-
gets the same number of laps and,
Yeah.
and doesn't lose fuel and their position on the track still matters.
Other question, you said there were longer heats. How long are your heats?
We
at
usually do.
Russ's?
I think at Russ's track it's usually been around 3 minutes 40. I don't know where he comes.
3 minute 40 heat, and you've got to stop 3 times for fuel in that time.
Yep.
Oh my goodness! How many seconds per lap?
Just going by memory, I would say that when I'm racing and not being too conservative, but not also being one of the faster guys, I'll get, say, 7 laps out of a tank. So then 14, and then I'll usually fuel at 20, and then 19 or 20, and then hopefully have exactly the amount of fuel I get to finish.
So
usually
at,
about
so at
25
no time are you ever really getting more than 7 or 8 continuous laps of driving.
At his track, because he's got those settings. Like you can set the fuel tank to burn however fast you want. If you want 50 laps
you can set the
before it
size
burns.
of the fuel tank and the burn rate of the fuel and stuff like that.
Or you can set like a NASCAR is going to use more fuel than our like Toyota Prius or whatever.
Yeah, he set it up specifically to burn that amount of fuel in that amount of time and that number of laps. Yeah.
Makes for a busy race, I would think.
What was that?
Makes for a busy race. Lots of people stopping and moving, and you're not actually concentrating on racing anymore. You're concentrating on managing your fuel.
I would say it's probably about 60-40, 75-25. It's definitely fuel management is important. But
it also, when it starts out, like people are friendly. Oh, you're getting low on fuel. You might want to stop. But then as it starts to get a little more competitive, then they're like, I'm not going to tell him. Yes. And then let him fight out on his own.
Yeah. It
just adds another element to the racing. It doesn't make the racing better, though.
Quite honestly, endurance racing lends itself much better to fuel stocks and fuel management, because I've done endurance races where you can get 15 minutes out of a tank of fuel. No fuel weight simulation involved. The car is always the same speed. But we've had races where we've had a few, and on one occasion we had the cars slowing down to significantly slower, let's say around 40% power. And what you find on a 2-lane digital track with 6 cars, when you do that, is that suddenly that car becomes a complete liability, because it's crawling, and then cars stack up behind it, and there aren't necessarily enough lane changes to avoid following it around for a lap. So what we subsequently did was subtracted on an empty tank. We can always get back round to the pit lane, which is the only place you're allowed to do refueling. But we subsequently only reduced the pace of the car by about 15%. So set the empty tank rate at about 85, which is enough for a driver to notice that he's run out of fuel. But it doesn't make the car a sudden, huge obstacle for everyone else in the race. And if it does, it's not for very long.
Mm-hmm.
And even though on 85% fuel pace, you can actually lap pretty quickly, not far off where you really needed to be quick. But it wasn't, we had the problem. We experienced the problem of cars being far too slow once they'd run out of fuel by accident. And the correction for that was to not penalize the empty tank by too much, and allow that car to actually make its way back to pit lane with a perceived deficit of power, rather than the inability to continue to do laps at a reasonable pace. And I know that will close the topic, but that's the advice I would give if anyone's trying to do this with Magic Arc, for example.
Well, and then I think Magic does it this way. I think Scalextric Arc app also does it this way. But most of the other Scalextric digital programs allow you to set whether or not the car can continue to count laps when they're in that state. And some drivers, if they find that their car is actually easier to drive at 75% power, so you have to also not count their laps until they pull in and refill their tank.
Well, that's not what we did, because we didn't want anyone to run out of fuel and completely miss a lap that they actually did. So we just allowed them to get to the pits under a lower power, but not that low that they were a liability to everyone else.
That's the line that you have to figure out where that line is not so low that they become an obstacle for everybody else, but also low enough that they want to stop and get fuel.
That's correct. Yes.
Because otherwise, if they continue to get laps and their car is easier to drive and not crash so much, I mean, I would probably just say, you know what, it takes longer to refuel. I'm going to go ahead and finish this race with no fuel.
I got a thing on my controller that'll do that. It's called a chuck.
Yeah.
I've got a thing on mine. It's called a finger.
Yeah, just
Too,
squeeze it
yeah.
so far.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We used to use the fuel system on Race Coordinator at the end of racing and all that, and anyone who wanted to do fuel racing stuck around, and we'd go into teams. And it's much more interesting if you've got 2 or 3 drivers doing the fuel, because one person would be there whispering in your ear, telling you, "Oh, you got 3 laps or 4 laps, come in next lap," and everything else. And your other person on the team was making sure he was talking to the other drivers, saying, "Oh, geez, you're doing a great job, fantastic. Oh, you nearly caught him, yeah," and take his concentration off not watching the fuel laps. And the amount of guys that would run out of fuel and just keep lapping and lapping, and everyone would be smiling in the background, and they go, "What's he smiling?" And then he'd look up at the screen and realise he's out of fuel and has been for the last 5 laps. So,
This is why endurance racing with teams of drivers, you can actually assign that role of monitoring the fuel level and advising the driver to take the pit stop to an additional member. I mean, there may be the marshal, it may just be a 2-man team, but if anyone's got the opportunity to look up at a screen and the screen's in the right location for everyone being able to see, then that works very well too.
So, Greg, if you run it, if you run at Russell's, can you, during practice, do you have that same capability of running on, of finding out how far your car will run on fuel?
Yeah, I mean, most of the time he just has it as open practice so that people can get used to driving their cars. I try to encourage him to turn on, to do basically practice races where the fuel is actually active. I'm not the host, so I can't make sure that happens all the time. But yeah,
but it is possible.
Especially when it's absolutely possible. Yeah. And especially when there's newbies, I'm like, you really need to let the newbies do that practicing. It's if only forcing them to practice stopping under the light, because you cannot be behind the light, you cannot be in front of the light, you gotta be right under the light, otherwise you're not gonna refuel. And a lot of guys will think, oh well, I better just brake at the exact right point for my car to just coast to a stop under the light, right in the center, and that's just not a thing. But surprisingly, many guys run with really sensitive triggers, so they can't creep up on the light either. So they're always trying to perfectly time the light, or just get the tiniest little flick on their trigger to move it forward, and then the car jumps ahead of the light, and they run out of fuel, and they're not under the light. It's like,
Greg, I wasn't aware of that one. So on the timing grid, you have to stop so the car hits the beam, and the beam it activates the beam and stays on. Or not beam, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, continuously breaks the beam. Yeah.
Ours are different. The HO tracks we have use 2 light bridges.
2 bridges, yeah.
You do that too.
When you've entered the first light bridge and haven't gone through the second one, that's when it starts adding fuel.
Yeah, I remember that from Mike's quarrel.
It can be set up both ways. It can be set up both ways. Race Coordinator supports both of them.
Yeah, you've got to set the timing on the light bridge or whatever on the fuel thing there, so that after a certain amount of time, it'll start to refuel. Otherwise, if it's on 0, every time you go through, you get a little bit of fuel every time. So, and you won't know until that you're exactly on the spot until the fuel starts running in. So you could have stopped and been in front or behind the light, and you're sitting there and nothing's happening. And they go, hey, go around again.
That happens.
So
a lot.
When I set mine up with the Race Coordinator, these LED strips go across the lane, and this tells you when you go underneath it. So you got to look at a computer screen. If you go underneath it and it's green, you're still good. Yellow is your halfway tank, and red means you're in danger with only a few laps left. So you can kind of look at your car. You don't have to keep staring at the screen. And then when you stop underneath it, this will blink in your lane color. So if you're the red driver, it'll blink red and white until the computer says full, go. And then that light will turn off, go back to this, and you know to go. So you don't gotta, it just makes less confusion if people can visually see it without looking at a computer screen.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, but Race Coordinator does allow you to configure multiple sections of the track. If you're in between those sections, it'll consider you in pit line. But being directly under the LED light is the way mine's is set up, and I prefer it that way.
Yeah, and it's a marriage between hardware and software. You know, if you
Yeah.
have a preference, if you have a specific kind of software that you prefer, figure out how that software will, if it does, figure out how it needs to be told that you're refueling, and then do that hardware. If you have specific hardware that you need to that you're not going to change, figure out what software you need to use for that hardware to do the refueling. Unfortunately, our software is no longer in development, and so if you don't have the hardware, you're just shit out of luck.
And I guess if you have a dead strip counting system, you're shit out of luck.
That is also true.
Yeah.
That's again with you relics and your old technology.
You know what?
You can't call people relics. That's politically incorrect.
The word is vintage, Jeremy.
Vintage. Okay.
It's called vintage racing. Okay.
They all have their pros and cons. Like the light bridge thing or infrared things. I've seen a variety of various light based things that you're cutting with a blade or the car or whatever. If you don't have an infrared opaque guide blade, that won't work very well. If you have a car with a bunch of holes in it, like an F1 car, that won't work very well. You know, if you dead strips work for practically everything, but if for some reason you're running a car with a digital chip, that won't work very well. There's no perfect system.
But I think, Greg, it's nice that you have the option, especially if you're trying to simulate different types of racing. So, for example, if you're doing 60s, 70s F1, you don't need to worry about fuel stops because they didn't.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, that's kind of neat. Although you could theoretically still run out of fuel, but that wouldn't happen. Whereas if you're doing modern F1, you would want to have a stop.
It did happen.
It did happen. Oh yeah, absolutely.
1967 Grand Prix South Africa.
Yep. Oh yeah, because and Chapman in 1967 Monza. That was the only time apparently that Jim Clark literally yelled at Chapman, and it wasn't that he underfilled the car; it was that they put foam in the two side tanks and it blocked the fuel flow. But Chapman was accused by Clark of underfilling the car because Clark lost it in the last corner. But what I'm trying to say is that that's what we're trying to do here. Is we're trying to actually have some sort of simulation of real racing. And no, it's.
So what about weather simulation, weather change simulations?
Well,
we can do that.
Oh yeah, if you want to do, if you want to do a rain race, put cellophane tape on your rear tires.
No, just run some cars with silicon tires.
Digital.
Lewis Hamilton in an interview said that's what he used to do as a child to simulate a rain race. They would put sticky tape on the rear tire so it would slip around. You have to be very, very good with your driving. I think that's a great idea.
There was a company that sold tires with a dice, and you would roll, and it would give. There was like 3 different compounds, like one for snow, rain, and regular. It was like Matus or something, or I don't. Yeah.
Or just get an old fly car. It's the same thing.
That's pretty accurate.
What about Scalextric with the cards? You used to put the cards on the lane, didn't you? You had to stop at the card.
Oh.
Anyone remember those?
No, tell us about that.
No. The only I used to play, with cards in billiard hall, but that's a whole different thing.
No, I'm serious. I don't know what he's talking about with the cards. What happened? Was it a game?
Yeah, you shuffled up the deck. You dealt the cards to the players. One of them would be pit stop. One of them would be wet weather, and I can't remember the others. But you would just literally, because one hand's on the controller, you had a free hand. You would stick a card on your opposition's lane, and they have to stop at the card to find out what the penalty was.
So, like an actual regular card deck?
Randomizing.
There weren't 52 of them, trust me, but it was a card. It was a piece of paper. I had them.
I want Mike to tell him how the real racing simulation works. Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, and in RCS 64, you can have variable weather in every aspect of it, and it changes the way your controller reacts during the race. And trust me, having tried it, it is diabolical. And the other part of it is, speaking of fuel again, when we're doing fuel, we have steps of fuel that change how much power we get in the controller. So every 3 or 4 laps, you have to be aware that maybe in the middle of the control of the braking zone or something, you'll have either more brakes or less brakes. So you have to be very aware when you're driving and very adaptable. And that's why both the guys that I race with have said that having to be adaptable has made them much better racers in analog, because they have had to adapt, and they can't just run a car that handles perfectly all the time. So it's an advantage that way. The other thing is we can have it set for tires, so you'd have 2 different length of tire wear, and the tire wear would go off. And let me tell you, I ran out of tires once with having a soft tire that gripped like crazy, and then all of a sudden it didn't. And because I instantly got a shot of power on my controller that I wasn't expecting, and I went off 3 times in 3 corners because I had the wrong tires. And there again, it's an adaptability for making the racing much more real, and you don't have to think about just going,
So it meddles with the throttle application and the braking, does it, Mike?
Yes, it does.
So in wet weather, your braking distance extends, I would imagine.
Yes, both the braking and the acceleration are changed. And
it introduces a delay in your input. So if the track becomes wet, and it'll tell you, rain is coming, track is wet, blah blah blah. If you don't pull in and put on rain tires, you're still running around on softs or hards. When you pull the trigger on the straightaway, it's not going to go for a split second because it doesn't have any traction. And when you let up on the controller to hit brakes, it's not going to brake for a split second because you don't have traction. So if you're using your same acceleration and braking points, you're gonna lag on acceleration and then crash in that turn. So you have to be ready to adapt your trigger pulling for the quality of traction you're expecting. And sometimes that just means, well, what kind of traction do I have? And you're just kind of figuring it out as you go. And then the next time around, you pull into the pits and you put on rain tires, and you've got appropriate acceleration and braking distances again. But if you then keep your wet tires on or your rain tires on and the track dries out, they wear super fast. So you end up losing traction and therefore braking and acceleration because you've worn down your rain tires to nothing. So you've then got to pull in order to put on hards or softs in order to have proper traction on a dry track. There's also intermediate tires for when the track is simply damp. It kind of is, halfway between those things. That's something.
I can imagine that it is diabolical, like Michael said.
It is very diabolical. And
God!
It's literally only possible with Scalextric Digital using the C7042 Advanced Power Base and Race Control System 64 RCS 64 on a Windows PC.
Or you could do what the rally guys do and put flour and cocoa right on the track and try and drive through that.
True, you could do that.
Club also was endeavoring to have that same effect without putting powder all over his track. So he finally ended up using shrink wrap on his rear tires because it didn't wear off as quickly as super glue or sellotape wore off. Shrink wrap didn't wear down as quickly, and yeah, they were just sliding all around. So yeah, I mean, like you were saying.
Now, I think you've just created a whole market for crap tires.
It's driving, and that it kind of goes back to what I've said in the past about you can drive any car around any track. It's just a matter of how you pull the trigger. You can have no traction at all, which just means you hold the trigger down until those slidey ass tires get the car moving forward, and then you let go way before it gets to the turn. And you keep doing that.
My old HO club that I used to go to in Derby, introduced a weather system with their HO cars. Now this only works really because they were all running the same chassis, and you can easily snap a rear axle out of a HO car and switch it. And they would do a randomizer. I don't know whether it was a dice throw or a coin toss or what, but they would decide that this event all night is going to be wet. And because the magnet traction is so significant with a HO car, what they would do is, if it was a wet one, they would then hand out rear axles with controlled rear tires on that were taller, and that would reduce the magnetic traction that comes from the traction magnets in the cars, and they would run all night long on the handout rear axle. And they would run wet events that way.
Or just set up your track on the floor and get an incontinent puppy.
Rather you than me.
Well, no, but you know, I'll tell you, like the great thing about real racing too, when you're in the rain, it takes all of your bad habits and amplifies them 50 to 75%. So if you're not braking in a straight line, you're done. If you're not accelerating in an absolute straight line, you're done. And that's the one thing I learned as a Formula car driver. My car control was really good. I just didn't have any balls. But in the wet, I would get a podium, no problem, because all the fast guys are spinning. They're cheating, and it works in the dry. It doesn't work in the wet.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I still think either old fly tires or putting cellophane on the back could be a hoot, right? Or get someone to actually you can cast in like harder. Wait a minute, Greg was printing tires. Remember, in some sort of
TPU, that's right.
Yeah, maybe that's the answer, where you have 3D printed tires that don't have a lot of grip, and you put them on, and there's your rain race. That's not a bad idea.
That's presuming you can take off your existing tires.
Well, I mean, he's 3D printed. You can get them on and off. There's one way of doing it.
Yeah.
Just get some
I think those are good ideas. So it means we can sell a lot more chassis after you've broken all the guide holders off them.
Yeah.
or bodies as well, right? As you slam them into something. Yeah, for sure.
More wings and mirrors.
Well, here you go. Now, if Scalextrics is watching this, their next big project is even crappier rear tires, and then you sell more spares for wings.
Yeah, but they already have drift cars, so that have those the 360-degree guides. So that
right, but are the tires different for those cars than the others?
Yeah, I think they have a harder compound on them.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yes. Well, there you go. Just see, then problem solved. You've already got the product. Remarket it. Yeah, call it the rain package or something.
Well, it's the art of racing in the rain.
I'm surprised they don't sell rally cars as drift cars. That seems like a no-brainer to me. They don't do drift-style rally cars or rally-style drift cars.
That's right, they don't. It's like drifting is a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah, but any real race car driver will tell you if you're sliding, you're slow. The whole idea is not to slide the car.
Yeah,
I'd much rather do some of that slidey racing with a rally car than some kind of street tuner.
Yeah, in that case,
give me some white-colored track and some 360 spinning rally cars. There we go, like SCX did with their snow track, but they never did the 360 cars, I don't think.
Just put the zero grip tires on the back.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the rally cars are exactly the same as road cars. So you don't want them slipping and sliding. You want them to have grip to get around the corners, even if it's a routed type track.
Yeah, but that's no fun. It doesn't look cool.
Well, it is fun, because then you get the faster one to go. You've got to set up. Setup is very important. Weight and all the other crap. But you can put stuff on the track there to make it slippery in sections. So I was looking at those little water feature fountains you get with the little pump that just trickles the water and all that. You dig make it a lower section in a track and have it waterproof. You can have water there constantly going across a track section there, so you're always going through a water dip. So there's wills and ways.
This hose down one corner with some aerosol silicone spray.
Oh,
Yeah, one of the guys on YouTube said he was just oil his track.
Oh, hey, that's it. You know what? That's a great idea. You could use Rain-X, which is basically, yeah.
and then try and get it off.
Yeah.
That's, yeah. Need something more easily reversible.
Well, if you're like Dewan, you have enough pieces where you can just replace that area of track. It's no big deal.
So
He's got multiple tracks worth of track.
Just going back on the weather, a few years ago we ran a race here. It was a stinking hot day, so we had the shed all open. All the doors were open, the windows open, fan blowing in. It was, like high 30 Celsius here, whatever that is in the old money. And 10 minutes before the end of the race, we had this massive thunderstorm come through and just dropped a month's worth of rain in about 20 minutes. And the humidity level went up to about 11. And next minute, all the cars are sliding everywhere. It was just unbelievable how that can change the weather, change the track condition that quickly. And yeah, it was an interesting end to the 500 lap race we run every year. So, yeah, it was interesting. Just by a rainstorm.
So, to change topic for the last 15 minutes of the recording, Dewan, would you like to tell us about your weekend?
Well, I had a very exciting time going out to London and to the Slot Car Festival. It was a lot to take in, especially first time around. I did meet quite a few people that many of the people in the chat knew of. Roger Barker, was it Roger Barker? Barker.
Barker.
Yeah. Barker, yeah. So I talked to him. I bought a few things from him and told him that quite a few people in our chat know him. Dennis as well. And I went there for a purpose, for really picking up a lot of scenery items and things like that I knew were unique, and I could pick out from a wide selection of things that I'm going to be putting this scenery around my different tracks. I think we got a suggested price for giant kit from people who are putting out the generic figurines that need to be painted versus the painted ones. So we kind of got saw what most of the vendors out there were charging, and I'll share that with them a little later. But yeah, my goal was kind of unique to pursue those types of items, and had a great time meeting Wayne, as well as a lot of other people that I've seen in both YouTube and on our chat. So it was a good socializing environment, and I strongly recommend anybody to go out there. It's an experience. Very overwhelming. I didn't know what the official vendor count was, but definitely was over 100 vendors, I'm sure, total there, and a lot of people were just showcasing different things. But there were vendors that were selling everything imaginable, from different types of unique products that you just really just don't know about, for truing your tires and warming your car, keeping your car warmed up prior to racing, and oiling your tires, automatic oiling machines, and the dynameters and things of that nature. That was, like I said, it's pretty nice. And that's a lot of old vintage stuff. And I talked to a lot of guys about vintage things. So it was, again, very.
Were you surprised by any elements of the show? For example, was it bigger than you thought it would be, or anything like that?
It turned out to be definitely. It lived up to its being, I would think, probably the largest slot event of its kind. I don't think there's anything out there that would be topping that. And then, as noted by many of the people that were reporting on it, there's some notable vendors that really should have feed and participate in it, such as Carrera and some of the other vendors and things like that that weren't there in
yes, a few of them are notable by their absence, aren't they? Like NSR and Carrera, for example.
Yeah, I was gonna say NSR as well, but
From the
I
slot.
think that there should have been more. I think that it will grow and actually be an eye opener for them to actually participate in, because it is a very international event. And the amount of people that were there, just unbelievable. What did they say the attendee count was? 5,000? I think some.
I had no concept. I never heard anything myself.
I think they were expecting between 5,000 to 7,000, and I definitely feel that was the case. I mean, it is open to those that attend the museum. This museum is the venue of what they use. So they use some of the upper, the second level of the museum to host showcase event. But they have the actual museum there, and that shows all the British made cars. My understanding from Wayne, you said they're down to just one vendor, one manufacturer in England now going forward. But they have nothing but British-made motor vehicles and a lot of historical stuff there, and it's well attended all the time from people that go to the museum, and then they get exposed to the Slide Car Festival that's going on at the same time. So, yeah, it was a very.
Share a picture.
Yes, please do, because I unfortunately I had a little personal thing. My gate went out on me while I was out of town, and I was out working on the fence and getting my gate up and running, so I couldn't get my things downloaded and ready for this chat. But Wayne took luxury of taking us around the town and showing us some sights and things like that. So that was very kind of him. Yeah.
I was gonna say I need to see some selfies here. Come on.
Well, yeah, there's the three of us.
That's in Shakespeare's hometown. He took us to he took us to what's the name of the town, Wayne?
I'll briefly tell the story. So the show closes on Saturday at about 4 p.m. and about 4:15. Well, I haven't even noticed. I'm still busy upstairs chatting with someone, and my mobile phone starts to ring. It's to 1, and he says, I'm not sure exactly where we're going to go. We're thinking of going out to eat somewhere. So I come out of the show. It's now closed. As I'm walking out, all the public have left. And we're sat out, and it's a gorgeous sunny day. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I ask him, where are you staying? And he says, I'm staying at the service area on the motorway. And I think to myself, well, that's not a great place to spend the next 5, 6, 7, whatever hours until bedtime. So I start thinking about what towns are nearby, what cities are nearby, and I think Stratford-upon-Avon is nearby, and that's the home of Shakespearean tourism. So that is us at the statue on the main street, the pedestrianised main street in Stratford-upon-Avon. And while we were there, we managed to do a little bit of Shakespeare tourism. Didn't go in any museums or anything, but they were all closed. But we got there. We get there about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the evening, and we went for a meal together, didn't we? And then I got you back to your hotel, and that was Saturday evening. But I also
he passed up an opportunity of going out with all the YouTubers just to hang out with me and my best friend Elena. So
yes, I did have an invitation to join them for tea, sort of thing. And I did say, look, I'll join you later if I get the opportunity. And I did, actually, because after I dropped you off, I drove over to Leamington, where they decided to go for a meal themselves. I arrived there at about 9:45. The Eurovision Song Contest was on a diamond screen, a huge diamond screen in the park that I drove past on the way into Leamington Spa, which I thought was nice. Everyone was out summer evening party. But when I got to the restaurant they'd all chosen to go to, they'd all gone home.
Yeah.
So 10 p.m. and they were all in bed.
Amateurs.
What a bunch of lightweights. Oh,
That's exactly what I thought, John. But do you know what? They were out late Friday night, so I understand it. But yeah, that was what I thought. So yeah, I'm not in that photograph of the dining table at the. And I don't mind. It's fine. I would have liked to have been there, but that's no problem. I met most of the guys myself, you know, and some of them for the first time, and I can tell you, some of them were in the stairwell taking a chill moment because it was.
I was going to say, if you know the organizers, Wayne, you should invite them to the chat and see if they can perhaps, you know, promote next year's.
Well, it's organized primarily by Julie Scale of Scale Scales Models.
Whoa. Her last name is Scale.
Yeah.
No, for real?
For real. And the
what's her middle name? 132nd?
Could be. I haven't asked.
That's just too much. That's a Python skit in the making.
And she was on the radio. She was on the national radio station, I discovered, in the morning of the Friday, I think. Gave a good account of the event. Yeah, it was a different experience for me the second time around. Last year being the first. This year I was actually umming and ahhing about whether or not to even go, but I'm really glad that I did. And obviously, you all know that as soon as Dewan told me he was going to be there, it was a done deal. And we had a good time, didn't we? We had, you know, we weren't in one another's pockets all day long or anything like that. But we walking up to the door just after arrival, and it didn't take seconds for me to spot Dewan and his travel partner in the queue. But yeah, so they went in through one door with a prepaid ticket, and I went through the other one. But we soon bumped into one another inside, and then we bumped into one another again and again, and then again on Sunday morning, and on it went. You know, you kept bumping.
Hold on, doesn't the UK have stalking laws? Like,
honestly, all day Saturday, I didn't even get a camera out to take a photograph because it was all bumping into people tapping you on the elbow and saying hello because they know of me for some reason or other. Look like Dewan's sharing.
Oh, nice. So you were really car shopping, Dewan. Good for you.
Well, Wayne inspired the colors for Clarence. He was wearing the same.
Yeah, that with his shirt. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, I turned up in that so that I was easy to identify. I actually sent on a picture of myself. There we go. This is what I look like when you get there. That's the picture I sent.
Yeah.
And I got the right top on for all the cars that were parked outside.
Yeah, he perfectly matched up to this. He was taking ownership of the McLaren. So those are McLaren owners that was visiting the museum that day. The next day they had some what was it? The Mini? No, I forgot what they were.
Yeah, they had, I think, sprites. They had sprites and midgets. Yeah, because I saw that with Wayne's video. It was awesome.
Yeah.
It was a little peculiar topic, but it's it's still car fun, so why not?
Oh, that's London.
Yeah, only in Britain will police officers smile at you.
Oh, wait a minute.
It's a beat, Bobby.
Yeah.
Hold on, they had the Christmas stuff out already?
Yeah, this was in Shakespeare's Town. This is actually his. I believe that this home in the background, if I'm not mistaken,
birth home.
That was his home.
Wow.
I have a question about the Slot Car Festival. Obviously, they had tracks up and they had exhibits and manufacturers. Did they have any workshops and seminars?
No, they didn't have that. They had what they did. The closest thing to that was a designer livery competition, which was paper and crayons, and they had something else. I
mean, that's to a photo trade show. That's a key component, is having things for people to do, not just look at stuff.
Yeah.
There was one gentleman there that was doing his own personal tinkering, and so he was in one of the rooms with a lot of vintage stuff. But
wasn't there a certain amount of racing going on as well?
Yeah,
there was one circuit in one of the exhibition rooms that hosted a Polycar Grand Prix, and that happened during Saturday. It's an annual, it's traditional. It's organised primarily by John Underwood, who joins the club, who joins the chat, who you know.
Yeah.
And there's a guy called Andy Rowland. I think his name's Andy. Surname's certainly Rowland anyway.
Yeah, he's the guy who designs. He's the designer of the Polycar Formula Ones.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And he does certain number of aftermarket parts to allow those chassis to run underneath alternative body shells. So we get a part of scratch-built cars as well as Polycar OEM cars. And that's into categories according to year, if I'm not mistaken. And there is one certain manufacturer that has his own six-wheeler, and it's got 4 rear wheels. And that homes you right in on exactly what Formula One car that is, if you know your Formula One. It's a Williams that never actually raced.
Yeah, there was also a March that had 4 rear wheels as well. Yeah.
Oh, it's actually the March. I'm mistaken. Both Williams and March did it. It's actually the March.
Yeah. So guess who knows? Okay, I won't say.
Yeah, guess who knows nothing about what he's looking at exactly. I know what you're going to say. That would that would be Maurizio Ferrari, who's trying to develop this rear, who's checking out this rear end with the potential for that to be a production car in the future. So he's racing this but the problem, he tells me the problem he has with the 4 rear wheels is that there isn't a front tire on the market that's got grip. So he runs 4 rear wheels, but he can't find grippy tires.
Oh, to make the front wheels the drive wheels? What?
Yeah,
he's got 6 front wheels on the car.
Yeah. So
it could be a rally Formula One car, no grip.
He's got I think maybe of the tires that are on the Revo Slot Group 2 cars.
Yeah.
Well, I actually know which tire he has got on there, and it's a Pendle Slot Racing OEM type tire. That's what he chooses to use because it's the best one he's found so far. So anyway, there's this Polycar track that hosts this race event that is quite competitive. It's concourse and race racing, and there are people who attend the show just to do that race. Certainly, some of the people I know and I race against attended to do that event, and no doubt they took in some of the show, but primarily they were there for that event. And then on Sunday, that track was completely open for anyone to use. Anyone that bought a car could throw it on there and give it some laps. I saw people doing the same with nearly every circuit in the building. There was the 1/24th scale electric, which is from the 60s and 70s, early 60s and 70s. You could arrive and just chuck a car onto his circuit. He'd let you do that. The Scale Auto track and the Polycar track were all running of a wide variety of cars that people had bought. I saw one guy that had bought a car and he put it on the track and it looked way out of kilter and it wouldn't run, as in he just pulled the trigger and it didn't move.
But you helped him.
I took one look at it from across the. Sorry, Greg, I didn't hear that.
Saying you helped him, but
I just said to him, it looks like the rear axle's not in line with the body. I think the bushing has popped out of the chassis, and so he picked it up, yanked it, and it popped back in, and away he went. And he got a perfect car.